So now we're talking about lateral spinal thalamic. So that tells us it goes from the spine to the thalamus. So it's going to be ascending. Right? And then what type of sensory information does it carry?
Sensory.
But more specifically, pain and temperature. Right. So then in the dermis and the epidermis of the skin, you have the pain receptors. They're going to come in through the dorsal root. And then they're going to have a synapse into the gray matter in the dorsal horn. Okay? It's going to cross at that level of the spinal cord, and it's going to ascend in the lateral column. Okay, so then they end in the dorsal horn of the gray matter. Then this is where you have your first synapse, right here. Then here's your second order neuron that crosses the spinal cord, ascends to the thalamus. So now we're on the opposite side of the body, right? Here we've crossed over to the opposite side. Then it goes from the thalamus to the cerebral cortex. Okay?
When it crosses, it goes to the anterior horn of the gray matter, or
the synapse is here in the dorsal horn of the gray matter. Now it's going to go across the spinal cord, and now it's going to ascend in the white matter. Okay? Because here's where the nerve cell bodies are, is in the gray matter. The places where you're going to have cell bodies are going to be in the gray matter, and then also in the dorsal root ganglion. Okay? The cell bodies are going to be here. So the reason why is it that you have a dorsal root ganglion in the posterior part and you don't have one in the anterior part?
anterior is motor.
Right, but there's still nerve fibers. Why you don't have a synapse there? Because sensory has 3 nerves, right? Motor has 2. Okay? Motor is going to have their synapse inside the gray matter here, and it's not going to be in that horn right there. There's going to be an extra one. So I keep getting mixed up. I keep getting confused with the dorsal. All the ganglion is just the cell body itself. It's not a synapse. So forget what I said. Sorry about that. All the ganglion is where the cell body is. It's not a synapse. Okay. So the synapses on sensory is going to be in the gray matter right there, and then another one up here in the thalamus.
That's 2.
Yeah. 2 synapses, 3 neurons.
Oh, okay.
3 neurons only have to have 2 synapses. Okay? So let's make sure we understand this. I don't want to confuse you. Is that sensory is going to have 3 neurons. It's going to come in and synapse at the spinal cord in the gray matter. Then it's going to ascend either on the same side or the opposite side, depending on what kind of tract it is. Then it's going to have a synapse here in the thalamus, and then it's going to go to the cerebral cortex. Okay? Motor nerves, they're going to have, it's going to start in the cerebral cortex. It doesn't have any synapses until you get to the gray matter of the spinal cord, and then it's going to go to the muscle. Okay? All right. We'll get that straight. All right. So let's review. Then we have lateral spinal thalamic, so we know it's going from the spine to the thalamus. It's going to come in through the dorsal root, synapse the first time right here at the dorsal horn of this gray matter. The second neuron crosses the spine, goes up the lateral column to the thalamus, and then it synapses and then goes to the cerebral cortex. So that's going to be pain and temperature. And now this one crosses as soon as it enters the spinal cord. The other one crossed after it got up to the medulla. Yeah, that was the posterior column, right? It crosses at the medulla. Lateral spinal thalamic crosses at the level of the spinal cord. So, I don't have to read that. So if we say lesions of the spinal cord and brain stem are going to be loss of pain and sensation contralaterally. And that's only if we're talking about half of the spinal cord, right? Obviously, if you sever the whole spinal cord, you're going to lose everything. But if we're talking about a lesion that affects half of the spinal cord of the brain stem, it's going to be contralateral. Okay? Because what we're talking about is we're talking about lesion to the actual tract, the part that's going up. So when it's ascending the spinal cord, it's already crossed. So if we have a problem in the spinal cord on one side, it's going to be pain and temperature loss to the opposite side of the body. Okay? I mean, obviously, if it was a problem to the actual spinal nerve coming in, it's going to be on that same side. But we're talking about the spinal cord itself, which is where the tract is. So if we have a lesion of C3 on the right, is it going to be the arm or the leg, and which side?
Both of them.
Both?
Opposite.
Opposite. Okay, and that's because it crossed at the level, and then all the tracts going up on the opposite side, on the right side, is going to affect the left part. So now, if we have T10, half of the spinal cord at T10, is which arm or leg or both?
Right leg.
Okay? Yeah. It's not high enough to affect the arm, and it's going to affect the opposite side because the tract is already crossed. So let's say it's in the brain stem, like it's in the thalamus. Okay, so it's in the brain stem on the left side, what's it going to affect?
Both.
Yeah, both, because it's up high, so it's cutting off everything. All right.
Where is the spinal cord, like the nerves for the hand? Where is it in
Oh, we'll get into that. This is the brachioplexus. Okay. We'll go through this a lot, but we can talk about dermatomes.
No, like what level of, is it P9?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that when you talk about the brachioplexus, okay, the way that the nerves come out, you have a cervical plexus with C1 through 4, which is about like here and up into the head. Then you get brachioplexus, which is about C4, C5 to about T1 or T2, and that's going to go down into the arm. Okay? So C5 is usually going to be right here, because when we're talking about dermatomes, we're talking about what sensory areas. Okay? So C5, this is C6, this is C7, this is C8, T1, T2. There's different variations depending on what kind of dermatomal charts. Okay, I mean, and we're not necessarily covering that right now, but it's something that you're going to need to know, and so the more times you hear it, the better. But that's the reason why you'll know which levels go to which, because about C5 to T2 is going to be brachioplexus. Okay, so in order to affect the arm, you've got to be at least up into the, like, more like at least C5, 6, 7, T8, T1. You may not lose the full control of the arm. But if you're talking about C5, then you're going to be talking about loss of a lot of the arm. Okay? And then if we're talking about the spinal cord, like severing your spinal cord, when you get around C5, okay, that's the phrenic nerve that goes to the diaphragm. If you're talking about C5 and higher, then you're talking about people that are on respirators, so they can't breathe for themselves. You're talking about C6, 7, 8, T1. Then you can be quadriplegic, but you can breathe on your own. Okay? So if you talk about C1, C2, then you're talking about like Christopher Reeve, right? He can't breathe, he can't hardly move much.
Especially now that he's dead.
That's true. He can't even move his ears either. Can't wiggle his ears, nothing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about light touch.
Were they this much fun in Chicago?
What?
Were they this much
So
fun?
then light touch is going to have two different areas that are going to carry it, which is going to be the ventral spinal thalamic tract and the posterior column. So posterior column, we talked about that. And now we're going to talk about ventral spinal thalamic.
So this is back of the